Everyone, it's Chandy here. Just a quick one before we get into this episode. This one was actually recorded a little while ago, but I completely forgot to schedule it for release. Classic me. So I'm putting it out now. And after this, we'll go straight back to the regular schedule that I had in mind of up and coming episodes that I'm editing and releasing. Again, thanks for your patience. So let's get into it. Hey, and welcome to Dude Minds My Ramp, a podcast that's all about disability and mental health. Access needs are important to us, so let's begin with some audio descriptions. I'm Chandy, I'm one of the hosts. I'm a white male in my 30s. I've got a short ginger beard with a haircut that's slightly shorter on the sides but a bit longer on top. Today I'm wearing a pink polo that's got white stripes across it. On the back behind me are some images on the wall in frames at various angles and positionings. Emma?
Hi, I'm Emma, and my background is blurred, so you can't really see anything. But I am a white woman in her early 30s. I have long, wavy brown hair, and I'm wearing glasses and like a gray dress and a black cardigan and like some bracelets. So today we are going to be talking about in the United States, in several U.S. states, what's known as MAID, medical aid in dying, and it means that terminal adults, typically those with 6 months or less to live, can legally request a prescription for medication to end their life. There are safeguards in place, confirmation by multiple physicians, waiting periods, and signed paperwork to ensure that the decision is voluntary and informed. And then as of today, June 20th, 2025, MPs in the House of Commons passed the Terminally Ill Adults End of Life Bill by a majority of 23 votes. And this legislation will allow mentally competent adults with 6 months or fewer to live to request medically assisted death. It includes similar safeguards to the United States, so approval by 2 doctors and a 3-member oversight panel, including a legal expert, social worker, and psychiatrist. The bill will now move to the House of Lords for further scrutiny before it can become a law. So this means right now in real time, the right to die debate isn't just academic, it's unfolding across legal systems, affecting millions of lives and bringing up deep questions about autonomy, ableism, and whose choice we're actually protecting.
And I think even since the bill in the UK has come into pass this time round, when it was, because they do like a 2 rounds of voting, and in between that there's like a committee phase, and the first round here it had better safeguards, so like there'd be a judge involved, but it's been watered down in that committee phase, and what's going through now to the House of Lords is severely lacking in safeguards. And I'm not being funny, but social workers are stretched enough in the UK, as I'm sure they are in America. And the judgments that they will make on that panel will be behind closed doors, and they won't be scrutinized, whereas a judge operates in a public space where he could be scrutinized, or they can be scrutinized a lot more, which I think adds a level of protection for vulnerable people. A panel could look at a person and see their life as less than, because they see their illness and say, oh, well, these doctors have assumed that you've got this amount of time left, when those figures and those kind of benchmarks of how long someone's got left to live can be wrong. They can often be mistaken, or with the right palliative care, they can have that period extended.
Mm-hmm. So as a disabled person and as a social worker, from all your like perspectives, what kind of emotions come up for you with this being like voted on today?
I think I'm, as a disabled person, I'm stressed and I'm anxious because I'm like, should there come a time when I lose capacity to make my own decisions because of my mental, like because of cognitive decline or whatever, though there's legal precautions to get someone that's like a power of attorney, which is like an appointed individual, often a
Yep.
family member, that would and I know that my family would support me and would give me the best quality of life. But I know that for other disabled people, I think it's like an empathy thing that I feel like I'm like, we're basically putting the lives of other people into a small minority of people. And I haven't been a registered social worker since I graduated because I just haven't found work. But with my background and my training and stuff, like, social work is all about holistic thinking and about helping someone to live with whatever's going on, whether that be their illness or their social situation, to make it better for them. Whereas this feels like a bit of the state going, oh, we've tried every other option. Death is your only option. So here you go, carry on. And I think in a dark way, it kind of it is profiting off death because there's no legal like safeguards that say that how much a private company can charge or what they can do. So like that again means that a business could say, yeah, we're going to start charging X amount of money to end someone's life.
Yeah.
And over time, those precautions could be stepped even further back. So rather than just being 6 months, it could be, if you want to end your life, here's the steps to do that.
Yeah. I think for me, I'm not, I consider that this, like, I'm not necessarily against these types of bills, but the reality is, because of the ableism that exists in our society, we cannot have these laws.
Mm.
Because it's like we there's with societal ableism still having such a stronghold on the general population's belief systems. It's ableism is it's what it exists in our healthcare systems. I would say often it's driving decisions of healthcare providers for disabled people. It exists within our social worlds, our families, and because it has such a stronghold on the world, ableism does. We cannot safely have these laws in place. I think if we dismantle label it, like, okay, like, you know, maybe if in that kind of a world, something like this might be possible and might even be beneficial, but we don't live in that world right now.
And I don't know what it's like in America, but here in the UK, so our palliative care system is mainly charities who might get small grants from government and stuff, but it's mainly charities and kind of those kind of organizations that deal with palliative care. So there's no state provision of palliative care in the UK, or whatever's there is minimal, and it's hard to access and stuff. And so rather than investing in that and making sure that the quality of life is there for people if they want it, this feels like a bit of a scapegoat and a bit of an option that's going to be cheaper for government because they're not good.
Eugenics.
And I think, yeah, I think it feeds into that idea of like the burden on society, because I think a lot of people, and I'm lucky, I'm not terminally ill, and my heart goes out generally to people who are suffering and in pain, because it must feel so intense and so draining and like physically and emotionally, like overwhelming. I can't even imagine what that feels like. But to be for society to tell that person that they're a burden because they're ill is, and maybe one day because they're disabled, because the law was going to change regardless, because future governments will want to adapt it and bring in amendments and stuff. I know that's going to happen, which is why it's stay in its current form. And should like a right-wing party come into power, if they want to cut costs and stuff, they'll expand that bracket of who can access the assisted dying, and there won't be as many. Like, I think under this new legislation, there's no, like, unless it's been flagged that someone has mental health problems, they don't really go in to investigate what's going on for that person with their mental health. Is this the right decision for them? It's just based on a lot of medical facts and stuff, so it's not necessarily questioned as much as it should be. And so if they did start to expand it and stuff, who's to say that someone who's got really bad depression and is feeling like a burden on their friends, their family, the state, says,
Yeah.
I would like to pursue this idea. And suicide has been decriminalized for years. It's no longer a crime. Helping someone to end their life is a crime under law, but obviously with this new act, it's changing slightly for certain groups of people. But I just think I saw it a poster and it was like, this bill, oh, what was it? It was like, let me find it. Now is not the right time, and this and another one saying assist us to live. It's almost like they've gone past the idea of these people are almost helpless and stuff. And I recognize that everyone's different, and having that choice is important. But if you have that choice but don't have the other alternative, which is to help people to want to live, it kind of, it's a state unconsciously. I'm going to choose that word because I can't say the other word. Subliminally, blah, blah, blah. Subliminally, kind of pushing that narrative and that message.
Yeah, I mean, so I think there's a couple of I'm thinking about the arguments that people in support of these bills are voicing, and I hear a lot of it's about personal choice and autonomy, but I think where that falls apart is there is no true autonomy when options are constrained by systemic ableism, poverty, neglect, racism, and lack of care. And if people are choosing death because they don't have access to what they need, that is coercion. That's coerced circumstance. So yeah, like to your point, how can choice be free when the alternative, living well, is not being offered? I also see, it's about preventing suffering, but where this falls apart is like whose suffering is seen as intolerable. Disability is often wrongly equated with suffering by outsiders, while many disabled people live with pride, joy, and without suffering. Suffering as defined by non-disabled people. And I think this argument also ignores much of what suffering comes from, which for a lot of disabled people, it's external. It's ableism, inaccessible environments, isolation. And I think a lot of times what's really concerns me is that, is just simply the label as terminal. Now, I don't know how it is in the UK, but in the United States, a lot of disabled people get misclassified as terminal based on ableist assumptions. I have muscular dystrophy, and I am often labeled and categorized as terminal. people with MS, people with all sorts of different conditions, and in jurisdictions with MAID, which is the United States bill for this, disabled people are steered towards death when they are not truly terminal. Canada is actually the clearest example. Canada also has MAID, and it's, the safeguards in place are only as strong as the biases that are enforcing them. And here in the U.S., systemic ableism has deeply shaped those biases.
And it's not just Canada, it's also the Netherlands that started with tight rules, and they've slowly over time changed to now allow euthanasia for mental health, chronic conditions, and even in cases where death isn't kind of imminent. So I think it's a slippery slope, and choice is one thing, but also safeguarding is another. And I think also the idea of like what is medical. I know we've spoken about the medical model of disability and how it's got its flaws, but also it's got some strengths. And doctors sign up to a Hippocratic oath that includes do no harm. And many doctors feel uncomfortable about being asked to end someone's life or giving that power and control to end someone's life. And I think it's hard. I like if I had a loved one that was in pain and was terminal, and I could see that they were struggling, I would want the best for them. And if that meant that they chose that they wanted to end their life, then I would respect that, and I'd support them in doing that if that's what they wanted, because it's their decision and it's their life at the end of the day. But I think assisted dying shouldn't be the only option, and this bill kind of in the UK that's just passed seems to be the only solution that government's considered. They didn't even consider putting more money into palliative care, but as I discussed, into access and inclusion rights and stuff for disabled people or other safeguards. And I think what concerns me is that, like, when I was at university and I started to get ill and have symptoms and stuff, and I was considering, like, I was like, if my tumor has grown back, do I just let it do its thing? Do I just let it? Because I'm so tired and sick of the pain that I'm in with these symptoms and not knowing. And if I know, then I can just let it do its thing. And then it was like the hospital kind of like we can do this, and this, and your options are really good and outlook's quite good and stuff. Like we're hopeful that we can do more than we did last time. And if I hadn't have had those options and been given those choices, I think I would have felt so overwhelmed, and I would have felt like such a burden because I was like, I'm ill. And like it triggers all these emotions in these conversations. But I think if someone is not given those options, or they're told, oh, but you can consider assisted dying, the automatic switch goes on, and you're like, well, if that's an option, then so I've been there. I've said if it was an option, I could, like, when I've been really ill, I've like, I felt like such a burden, such a nuisance on my family. And I think to end that pain would be so easy for them because they could just carry on with their life and not have to worry about me. Wow, this has got deep.
No, I know, but then I'm thinking like, but family, like families that love you, they don't carry on. They are wounded for the rest of their, when you lose a loved one, even if it was hard to take care of them, maybe, like, you just want them there. When you hear people talk about a lost loved one, they would do anything just to like smell them again, And I think people really, when I felt like a burden on my family, This is like the egotistical part of me. I'm like, you know what? No, they would be like, they would be so freaking bored and sad without me. And I feel like, even if everybody gets mad at me, like, I don't know. Nobody ever wants a loved one gone. And I hate that disabled people feel like such a burden, because I think we really need to, I understand, because I've felt the same way. And I feel so sad that we as a community, and it's not just disabled people, everybody feels like a burden when they need help or care. And it's like, we all depend on each other for survival. We're interdependent beings. Like, I don't know. I just feel like, and we come into this world needing absolute care as babies. If whoever lives to be like a senior citizen, yeah, most of those seniors need help too. It sort of aligns with like life, to be honest.
And I think that it makes me think about the question, like, where does autonomy end and then societal responsibility come in? Because if someone's suffering is caused by systemic issues of, like you said, like poverty or lack of care, are we really respecting their autonomy, or just by letting them die? And I guess from a mental health perspective, depression and hopelessness can look like a rational choice to die, but these are often temporary without mandatory mental health checks and without this proper support and kind of holistic thinking around someone's mental health and the impact. Those decisions might be clouded in fear and judgment and anxiety and depression and stuff, and those are all valid experiences and valid emotions that person's experiencing, but they need to be listened to and heard and recognized and made to feel valued, not made to feel that death and is the only option.
Well, I feel like an important step in both the UK and the United States was, like, for people that have, I think, in order to like receive, this medically assisted death. I think, one safeguard that I think is essential, that I don't see anybody even trying to put into place, is that I think, a lot of people with these diagnoses are surrounded by people who don't understand their experience, whether it's doctors or family members or friends. I think this is where you look to your community. So the people that have your diagnosis. I mean, there should be somebody addressing that. Like, no, here's the 411. I'm like, what you can, like, what you actually can and can't do, or what life can be. And I don't know. I feel like a lot of times a person, there's yes, the feeling like a burden. Maybe the way that the diagnosis changes a person's life is something is extreme, and that's a lot to handle, and you go through a grieving process. But I totally lost my thought. I don't know where that was. I don't know what happened. It just poof went gone in the middle
No,
of the sentence.
I get what you mean. I think while you're speaking, I suddenly got the example of, like, Parliament are just about to vote on the cuts to disability benefit here, so PIP, which is personal independence payment, and it's not work related. It's
Allowing that's eugenics as fuck. Like,
and I've had conversations with my MP about it, and I'm like, if you cut disability benefit that is not work related to force people into work because you think work pays, one, that's going to impact their health. And a lot of people who are terminally ill or who might one day meet the threshold for this new legislation rely on PIP to survive. And if that's cut and then they become terminally ill and someone gives them the option of assisted suicide or assisted death, sorry, they're going to choose that, or they might be coerced into choosing that because it's going to remove all those other kind of worries about money and how they're going to survive. And
yeah. And I think it's interesting. I was thinking about this the other day. In my particular community of the neuromuscular community, most of us are treated with there's always the intent to extend life, but there's one diagnosis within the community where they're fast tracked to hospice and end of life, and that's ALS, which is what my mother has. And I'm sorry, my roommate's dog started barking. Drop that thing off the Humane Society, I swear to God. No, I'm not. He's so fucking loud and annoying. But okay, so and I was thinking about that a lot. Like, okay, the reason why ALS is treated differently and why they're because they're seen as individuals being stripped of life, where all other types of the neuromuscular conditions are seen as never really being fully formed human beings. And so in terms of end of life, we get most of people with neuromuscular conditions are gonna end up being okay. But ALS, I've watched it. I'm watching this happen in real time with my mom, and nobody fought to expand the map. She's making all of these decisions, and I think, like, what is choice when everybody around you looks at you and treats you like you're a broken version of who you used to be, of life? And I think about, like, what that would have done to me emotionally and how that would have affected how I moved through life and made decisions for myself if my parents and my siblings and my friends and my cousins and everybody that knew me saw me as, like, a diminished version of Emma, or of the human experience of, I don't know if I'd really want to stick around either. That weighs heavily on people, and I don't think that's really recognized just how, I mean, how I mean, that will put anybody in a state of complete despair if you think everybody looks at you and everybody's treating you like that. What I mean, and I think so. There's an example of this was back in, like, 2018 or something. A 14-year-old girl in Wisconsin, my home state, Jerica Boland. She was 14 at, like, 2018. Had diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy. Decided to try and fight for her right to end her life. And because she was 14, that wasn't legal. So she had to go through the courts, and the courts granted her permission, and she did ultimately, and the way that it was, she had this, like, the town threw this huge party, like prom, and it was celebrated, and the media around it was an absolute circus. And this poor girl, not poor, she had SMA, but, like, she was clearly didn't get what she needed. She was living in Oshkosh, which I can tell you, I'm from Wisconsin, all right? Oshkosh, there's not a lot going on, all right? Sorry if you're from Oshkosh. It's just not my favorite. It's just, I mean, like, like, you really gonna disagree? Like, there's probably, like, an Applebee's and a Culver's and, like, a bowling alley. I don't know. But you know, this and she was also I think she was half black, she was mixed, so she also wasn't, she was not white. So this girl was saying that she was in pain, and everybody just dismissed it as, yeah, no, SMA like means you're in pain, so yeah, this makes sense to have you do this, end your life. And as much as the SMA community and the neuromuscular like tried to reach out, it was unsuccessful, and this sweet little girl died, and everybody celebrated it like she did something heroic. And I think what was really going on is this, she needed emotional care, and wasn't, she needed mental health services, she needed community, probably she probably didn't have all the things that she needed in terms of like accessibility or adaptive equipment. And I you know, it's that shit. Kids die when these laws become like, are put into place. It allows, because Jerica, this was all before these laws came to be, and a child died. So I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but if that could happen back in 2017, 2018, I don't know. I'm afraid for the future.
And I think this now kind of paves the way for, I don't know how, what am I trying to say? So in the UK, I am going to have to look at my notes for this because otherwise I'll forget. The use of the Henry VIII clause in the bill is really alarming because it allows ministers to rewrite key parts of the law later with minimal like parliamentary scrutiny. And that's a problem in a democracy, which we claim to be, because there needs to be that oversight, there needs to be that thing. So if there's not going to be consultation, or not going to be that same level of scrutiny, if power is taken by someone who,
Our governments have a good history of like a democratic attitude. We pretty both our country governments like to kind of be like, no, I tell you what's going on.
I think it makes me question, like, what kind of society do we want to be? Is it to make death more accessible before giving care, dignity, and equality truly available to people? And I think for me, like, I've had suicidal ideation. I've had thoughts where, like, I was like, if I don't wake up tomorrow, the pain will end. All these anxious thoughts and stuff will just go away. And as I said earlier, like, my family will feel easier, and they'll be upset for a while, but they might get over it one day and have a better quality of life without me. And that's something I've come to terms with and I recognize. But I also now know that giving people dignity, giving people the right to live and the right care, helps them to have a life that doesn't look the same as what is quite normal, but it still means they can have opportunities, they can be supported in living an amazing life until they do die.
I think, I think what it comes down to is like, again, I'll go back to my earlier point, like, am I against these types of laws? No, because there's always going to be a case where it does make sense, you know, because the human experience is, I mean, there's no like number on it. It's like it's all unique, and there's always going to be something that makes, there's always going to be a situation where, you know, it makes sense. But it's about, we have not built a strong enough foundation to be able to have something like that. I mean, it's sort of like, you know, that comes much later, and we are not evolved as humans, as you know, society, whatever, you know, we're not there yet. We're incapable of being able to do this ethically, you know. I don't think, I have seen nothing about any government worldwide makes me feel confident that this can exist, these types of laws can exist without violating ethics and harming lots and lots of people. I just, you know, it's sort of like, you know, however you feel about abortion, yeah, well, we need to have it in place because that's what we need. And, you know, there's always going to be a situation where it makes sense. And also, it doesn't, you know, making it against the law doesn't affect, it doesn't affect everybody. It affects the most marginalized. So same with this law, is it doesn't affect, it's affecting a part of society that is the most marginalized and the most at risk. And so I think this is a very dangerous, and who's running the government, who is overseeing these laws? People that don't understand disability. Same with, in the United States at least, who are the people like overseeing abortion laws? Men and people who don't have children.
I saw an article about someone in America who, she passed away and they've kept her body in a stable condition and removed the baby that's been in the womb. Is that right?
Yes, and I just want to acknowledge that you use like the correct language, because a lot of people have been saying like, oh, she gave birth. No, she didn't. She's dead. To give birth, you have to actively participate, and she did not. So yeah, no, I think that's like important to acknowledge, like, baby was removed.
One thing that's annoyed me most about this whole debate and stuff that's gone on in the UK is that MPs who previously voted, like in the last parliament, so when like the Conservatives, which is the Republicans in your case, so our version of the Republicans were in power, there was a vote on assisted dying and it didn't pass. Like, this isn't the first time this has happened. Like, it hasn't passed through. So what's different now? Because MPs who voted for it against it before are now voting for something that's weaker than the legislation that's been before.
Yeah, it's again, I mean, we all disabled people, and others too, but all disabled people we can smell the eugenics. Okay, we can smell it. Sharks can smell blood from a mile away. I can smell eugenics from a mile away, as can most other disabled people can sense it. Like, this is eugenics. This is what that is. And this is about sorting people into categories of who is worthy of life and who is not, who gets to live and who is, you know, guided to the end. And this is something that in Western cultures, the governments have been able to get away with. And I think anybody who's supporting these laws, I think there are lots of people who really are not necessarily supporting it out of like hatred for anybody or want to, you know, eradicate the world of any group. They think it's about they think they believe in the government and the safeguards, and they believe that it's giving autonomy and power back to individuals. And I really think it's important that everybody, if you have the ability to participate in your government, if you're of that age, but also if you're younger, I think it's important to go to, I mean, go to the activists within the disability community who are talking about this and listen to them. Because you're not going to get it. You're not going to be fully informed by people in the government or people who don't experience this form of marginalization.
And there is people in the disability community who are disabled who wanted this bill to go through, and I'm not saying that they're wrong for wanting that. That's their choice. I respect that. I just think that it's a hard conversation to have, and it's not that I don't want that right to be there for people should they want it, but as you say, like, our society is not catered enough yet, like tailored itself or catered, whatever you want to use, whatever term you want to use, like around disabled people, and have those precautions and options in place, because this should be one of many options, but it could fast turn into the only option.
Yeah. And I think it should always be, I mean, the consequences of going ahead of the game and creating these laws, any work that we have done to dismantle systemic ableism will take a huge step backwards, I think. And you know, and it's also kind of, to be honest, it's kind of shocking. We saw how quickly a new eugenic movement emerged when the pandemic hit. And I don't think people are recognizing this is how quickly and easily things get to that place. And I mean, it's only 2025. I think COVID hit, or 2020. It was only 5 years ago. Yeah, it was 2020. That's not long ago, and that's already been blocked out of people's minds, or they don't even know about it. And so that scares me. And that means that people voting and people who are not making fully informed decisions, at least in the United States. I don't know, like, so you're people. So we would vote for something like that. Well, our government would pass that law, but yeah, that's how it works in both. You just call different things, but the way it's passed is not that different, I don't think. It is, but it's not like it still gets decided on by people that are not the citizens.
And I think it's just the lack of understanding, like you say. Like, when I spoke to my MP about the cuts to disability benefit, and I explained like the feeling of being a burden and stuff, and that was glossed over. That was like just totally ignored, because they were like, yeah, but work pays, and you get to engage with people, you get all this stuff out of it, and without thinking holistically and thinking about, yeah, but if someone loses their benefits and can't get into work because they're ill, and now this is coming into law, it won't be for a few years because it has to go through, or like has to have royal assent and stuff. So it might only be like next year or the year after. But they might just be like, oh, well, in a few months I can apply to end my life without it having consequences. It just is. I think it's not a topic we can cover in its entirety in an hour-long chat, and it is a very emotional topic.
Yeah, yeah, it's emotional, and it's very real. And I think, yeah, I guess really just to kind of sum it up is that it's for anybody who maybe doesn't really know about this, or this is a new topic. I would suggest reading about this as much as possible, because this might affect you tomorrow. You might step outside, get hit by a car, become, get a traumatic brain injury, and be pushed to, to get medically assisted, death. It can affect anybody at any time. Nobody is safe from the consequences of laws like this. And so I think it's really important that everybody be well informed and really understand what it means and why it puts everybody in danger. And I think it's also important to understand, like I said, if there's a society, if these laws are important to have, what do we need to do as a society to get to a place where these are safe? What steps are those? And then let's start taking those steps. But I don't know. Because I've only lived in this world, I really can't imagine how that. I can't even put that in my imagination of what that when it would possibly not be dangerous. But I do. I consider that might be a thing.
Thanks. Should I do the close now?
Yeah.
Even I'm struggling to kind of digest what we talked about. So that's a wrap on this episode of Dude, Where's My Ramp? Thanks so much for spending this time with us. If anything we've discussed has triggered any difficult emotions, memories, or mental health struggles, please know that you're not alone. We've included a list of support resources in the show notes, which are trusted organisations in the UK and US who are there to listen, help, and guide you. You can find us on social media. Our social media handles are in the show notes as well. Feel free to send us a DM if you want to get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review. Also, don't forget to share this episode. The more we spread the word, the louder our collective voice becomes. Tune in into a new episode every Monday. More stories, more laughs, and probably more rants about ramps and mental health and disabled life. Until next time, take care of yourself, your ramps, and each other. Remember, we're all in this together.
Go Wildcats!
I fucking love that.